to go to the streets. I've seen this even in Migori County, Madam Speaker, and I've raised it in this House time without number. And I hope that soon, when the people of Migori will start going to demonstrate against poor services in level 4 hospitals, as well as the Migori District Referral Hospital, Mr. Speaker, they will not be met with this kind of force, Madam Speaker. And it is important, Madam Speaker, that this committee must actually be able to call IPOA to tax, Madam Speaker, because the investigations against this kind of brutalities, especially where fatalities have emerged to the extent that people have lost lives, and we keep on seeing, time without number, these investigations going on and on and on, yet the police that commit this kind of crime are just within our borders. The best that sometimes we do get, Madam Speaker, is that sometimes a police officer will be taken away from Meru, and then that police officer is taken maybe to Migori, or taken away from Meru and taken to Turkana in some hardship places, as if that transfer is even commensurate to the kind of damage they cause to these families that go years and years mourning their beloved ones, Madam Speaker. This must be brought to book. These officers must be brought to book, Madam Speaker. And I hope that, Madam Speaker, even as the Kenyan National Commission for Human Rights, Madam Speaker, is considering people who are going to be compensated since 2017 for having lost lives in this kind of situation, will have mercy to even families that continue to face these kind of injustices. Because it's extremely important, Madam Speaker, that we recognize that compensation cannot replace lives, but it's an important step sometimes to be able to help families be able to deal with the stress that this has necessitated, Madam Speaker. And lastly, Madam Speaker, I also want to say that from the profile that I've seen from these families, Madam Speaker, it is very important that the government of the day, especially the national government, where these police officers are immune to arrest and immune to punishment, must also have mercies on these families and be able to help them deal with the stress that comes with this kind of grief. Not only during the time of dealing with funerals, but even in the gaps that they will leave, perhaps with their families not being able to go to school and not being able to deal with their day-to-day survival, Madam Speaker. So I strongly support this, but it is high time as a country we must put an end to police brutality.
Honorable Senators, I see a whole list of more people wanting to speak. The time that had been allocated by Speaker is over. What I will do is allow maybe just 2 minutes each for those. I will give a space. Senator Abbas, please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to also join our colleague, Dr. Mdiki, for the unfortunate situation that has taken place in Embu. Madam Speaker, we have a similar case where a young man has been shot at a barrier in Garissa some 2 days ago. And this is the second incident in Garissa now. The very police officers who are supposed to guide the lives of people have become now the criminals shooting people, which is a very unfortunate situation. Madam Speaker, they could have their own problems, but I think that they should not release their tensions, killing people, innocent people. Honorable Madam Speaker, I also want to condole the family also, both for Garissa family and Embu who lost their young ones. And I want to tell them it is a high time this country has to have a conversation on how best we can be able to handle these behaviors of our police officers. Because this country now has been taken over by goons, and police officers are killing people the way they want to do, have been killing and trigger-happy officers. I think it's a high time that we need to contain this situation and take action against all these officers. One other thing is, Madam Speaker, when an officer kills somebody, a Kenyan citizen, the officer is moved immediately, either being transferred or hidden somewhere, and then the police say that we're looking for him. How do you look for somebody? He could be arrested immediately. Immediately that somebody kills somebody, he should be arrested and taken to court. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Asige.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I would like to also make a comment on the statement made by Senator Mwaruma on the non-registration of persons with disabilities in Taita Taveta, and of course, as we know, this is something that is happening all across our counties. Madam Speaker, it's really unfortunate that it is actually official that cabinet has confirmed that they're knowingly delaying the rights of people with disabilities in the country. And if you listened, even in our meeting in Naivasha as senators, during the Senate Assessment and Planning Retreat, I remember I asked for CS for Health, how disability rights are being applied and operationalized. And his response was astounding, that the cabinet is still thinking about it, he said. They want to bring the law back and persuade parliamentarians that implementing the disability rights that we envisioned is controversial amongst the cabinet. That's what he said. He didn't give any timelines, no plans, and no apologies. That response, Speaker, confirms what we as PWDs have felt all along, that disability rights amongst this state is treated as charity, as a suggestion, as a, we'll think about it. Madam Speaker, this is absolutely wrong and is in direct violation of our constitutional rights as people with disabilities. And what Senator Mwaruma has said is supporting exactly what I had feared all along. Madam
You
Speaker,
have 40 seconds more.
Speaker, when we passed that law in this House, as well as Parliament, the Assembly, we were hoping that the state would actually do something about it. But a year later, this year, May, will be a year after, they have done nothing. There are 8 million people, majority Speaker, with disabilities in the country, according to WHO. But only 900,000 have been actually recorded in the country. That means that there are over 7 million PWDs that are not recognized by the state. No voter registration cards, no ID cards, no disability cards. They are completely ignored by the state. And all we want is to be recognized and our rights and freedoms to be appreciated and given to us, because we are full and functional members of this citizenry. I thank you.
Senator Wakoli.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii. Kwanza ni kujiunga na familia ambazo na hoja ya Mheshimiwa Mundigi, Daktari Mundigi, Senator wa Embu County, ambaye ameleta hoja kwamba wapiga kura eneo lake waliweza kupoteza maisha kwa kudai haki ya afya bora. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwa sababu hii waziri wa afya alikuwa hapa jana na akadondoa hoja kuhusiana na zile pesa zinaenda katika hospitali za kiwango cha 4, cha 3 na cha 2 katika mashinani. Mheshimiwa Spika, baadhi ya magavana, Mheshimiwa Spika, hawataki kuwajibika. Na jinsi unajua wanavotoza ushuru wa Kenya, wameweza kufurahia kwamba sekta ya afya katika kaunti zetu ndizo zinazotoa fedha nyingi katika magatuzi yetu. Sasa ni kusema kwamba fedha za wagonjwa ni tamu, lakini kuwatibu wagonjwa ni donda sugu. Mheshimiwa Spika, sasa lazima tuwaombee magavana ili wawache kumezea mate pesa za wagonjwa na washiriki katika hatua za kuwatibu wagonjwa hawa. Ningependa kumalizia hapo Mheshimiwa Spika ili wenzangu waweze kuchangia. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Mogeni.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, I wanted to comment on the statement that has been brought by Senator Mundigi, but also add one thing. You know, Madam Speaker, if we are making payments or compensating those who are victims of the police brutality, then we are also saying there are people in the police force who are involved. So if we are making payments, we should at the same time be seeing prosecutions. You see, that's why you are seeing somebody was killed during that time in Nairobi. Now Mundigi is telling us this problem has happened in Embu. Because we have not dealt with the problem within the police force. You know, why we created the Police Oversight Authority was to ensure that they get rid of the bad apples within the police force. If we pay these Kenyans today, and we leave those police officers who killed people to continue serving, who tells you they are not going to kill people tomorrow? Today, it is somebody from Senator Mundigi in Embu. Tomorrow it will be Nandi. The day after it will be Nyamira. So, hand in hand, Madam Speaker, we should do what is done in the best international practices. Even in Arusha, as the reparations were being paid, criminal liability was also being pursued, because there must be accountability. Those people who are killed are people's children, Madam Speaker. You can't tell them, we have paid you, but they don't know what happens to the person who killed those innocent children. So I'm appealing, Madam Speaker, to our conscience to push Madam Speaker, that those who are responsible should be identified and then criminal action should be taken. Secondly, Madam Speaker, as I conclude, I wanted to comment on the statement on the SHA payments, Mr. Speaker. Our county hospitals can ground to a halt if we don't get timely payments from SHA. I want to appeal to the government, Madam Speaker, to ensure that all pending bills to our facilities at the county level are paid as soon as possible. And there is a problem of fraud at our counties. If you look at the Auditor General's report, most governors are stealing money from hospitals. They collect the money, they put it in their pocket. Like one facility in Nyamira, Nyamusi Hospital, has been put off SHA. Women giving birth are being forced to pay 4,000 shillings because SHA has blacklisted that facility because of fraud. And that report is in the Auditor General's report. How, I don't understand what happens to some governors. How do you make poor mothers going to deliver to pay 4,000 shillings for a facility that...
Senator Thangwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise also to comment on this statement concerning police brutality in Embu, where 2 young men lost their lives. That is Maurice Njue Njoka and Patrick Kariuki Munene, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise to support this statement and ask for speedier investigation on this matter, Madam Speaker, I would want to remind this House that the man who says it is not my fight will one day fight alone, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have been here on numerous occasions raising issues on police brutality. But because we do have a mandate to defend our people, we cannot let such statements go unnoticed or discussed or enforced, despite the people who request them never say anything whenever we request such statements and whenever we ask for accountability from the police, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, this statement is a cry from the people and a cry about life, Madam Speaker. But I need, as the committee that is going to be tasked from following on this matter, Madam Speaker, we should also ask, is the IG of police, is the police department, is the National Police Service still moving on with the clarion call of shoot the leg for any demonstrator, Madam Speaker? Because you see, Madam Speaker, they could be following that clarion call, and we don't know their training. Maybe they are missing the legs and shooting elsewhere, Madam Speaker. So we would want to ask the committee to also request a statement from the presidency and the executive to denounce the clarion call, because probably the police are still using that statement, Madam Speaker, to do what they are doing today. Nevertheless, Madam Speaker, when are we going to see any arrest?
Senator Ogola.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Madam Speaker, I would like to comment on the statement, the great statement by the Senator of Nairobi. And as I do that, Madam Speaker, I want to ask county governments why they have to punish our mothers for giving birth to humanity. It is unfortunate. Senator Mogeni, Senior Counsel, has just said that there's an hospital where women have to pay 4,000 shillings, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is unfortunate, that is evil, and that is being very unfair to women. Because without deliveries, we'd have no humanity, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the statement by the Senator of Nairobi, it is a statement on onboarding of police officers, their prisons counterparts, and their dependents onto the Osalama medical cover. Madam Speaker, as this statement is looked into, I would like it to be enhanced that the benefits that are to the police officers must be enhanced. Madam Speaker, the services that the police officers give as citizens of this country are noble. And so anything that can be done to make them comfortable as they serve us must be done, like yesterday. On the same note, Madam Speaker, there's the issue of the medical cover of teachers in this country, SHA, to be specific. It is unfortunate that teachers are only having 1,200 shillings on their outpatient cover. And yet we know in our county hospitals, Madam Speaker, even when you go for services, laboratory services alone in some of the hospitals I've visited are over 1,500, Madam Speaker. So then what is the balance the teachers would have in their outpatient cover, Madam Speaker? All this must be looked into, and our public officers must be given comfort, Madam Speaker, in the course of their work because of the services they continue to offer to our people. Madam Speaker, I support that statement by Senator Sifuna. Thank you.
Senator Cheruyot.
Madam Speaker, I'll be very quick. First is on this statement by Senator Okoli, and I wish Senator Omogeni was here because he has made it a habit of giving information which is misleading on the performance of SHA. Because yesterday the minister tabled a very comprehensive response to all these issues that he keeps on raising. And I really wanted him to be here so that he reads the report and perhaps give his verdict based on the things. But that's not the reason why I stood up. Mr. Speaker, I stood up to condemn the innocent shooting of these 2 young Kenyans in Embu County. Madam Speaker, up to when shall we as a House continue lamenting? We are leaders. We have the responsibility. It is clear to us that our police are struggling with crowd control. And we have a very serious issue where, due to their struggle, we continue to lose Kenyans every other day. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, this cannot be allowed to continue. Condemning alone is not enough. Showing that you're angry, speaking about it in political rallies, as some have made it, Mr. Speaker, their political agenda, but they care a hoot about what happens to the lives and the families of these young people. We must rise up to the challenge of leadership. We must ask ourselves, as Parliament, as a Senate, what is it that we can do about this particular menace, Madam Speaker, so that we put it to a stop, so that no other Kenyan ever loses their life. Many of us, Madam Speaker, myself included, used to participate in protests as university students, as activists, Madam Speaker. But the police at that particular time, though you could see that there was obvious struggle, as is the case right now, Madam Speaker, it never used to result in the number of deaths as we are seeing in the latest statistics, Madam Speaker. Therefore, is it a question of training? Is it capacity? Is it lack of crowd management equipment? What is it? We must sit down as leaders, Madam Speaker, in a bipartisan way and find ways, have a conversation with the leadership of the police service and speak to each other like Kenyans and ask themselves, what is it that is leading to this kind of mess, Madam Speaker? Therefore, I will be proposing to the House, and I want to challenge those, Madam Speaker, who perhaps feel the need to rise to the challenge of the day, Madam Speaker, that we need to sit down in a room, away from the cameras, Madam Speaker, but as leaders to consider.
Honorable Majority Leader, that is a very good proposal. I hope you'll follow it too, through to the end. Next order.
Order number 8, the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 15 of 2025, second reading, resumption of debate.
Senator Eddie Okech, you have a balance of 50 minutes.
I want to thank you again, Madam Speaker. And I wanted to say that this bill is one of the cornerstone bills that I hope that we can be able to pass as a House in this session. And I hope that in the spirit of what the Majority Leader said, that if it is possible to put pressure on the National Assembly to actually be able to churn out some of our bills the same way we are churning out some of the bills from the other side, Madam Speaker, it will be very critical. Because, Madam Speaker, more perceptive, as you might realize, and for those members who were here yesterday, this is a bill that wants to rethink the idea of construction in the country with regards to how we can re-engineer our buildings to be able to meet climate resilience standards. Madam Speaker, this is a bill that also attempts to be able to bring about regulations regulations and some authority in the National Construction Authority to be able to redesign and rethink the National Housing Code that we have so that we can start retrofitting our buildings and our general construction in the country to meet the global standards of dealing with extreme effects of climate change. Madam Speaker, in the recent past, we have seen in countries not dissimilar to Kenya, including some places like Dubai, Madam Speaker, we have seen serious effects of floods, serious effect of extreme heat, and serious effect of storms due to climate change. To the extent that, Madam Speaker, you always have an either-or situation. If it rains, you have extreme floods. There is nothing like moderate, precipitation. And if it doesn't rain, you have got extreme heat, Madam Speaker. And sometimes when people look at places like Europe, and even sometimes in the United States, and start seeing wildfires because of extreme heat, it looks so far-fetched from us as a country to the extent that some people might think that this is so way removed from us. But if it is anything is to go by, Madam Speaker, is just the flooding that we have seen in Nairobi in the recent past and across the country, Madam Speaker, to the extent that the torrential rains that we have seen in this country affected us so much that it completely disrupted the lives of our people. And there is need to recognize that climate change is real, and we must be able to go to the global standards when we start thinking about serious building in our country, Madam Speaker. And the reason why this is important, Madam Speaker, we have seen that since 1962, there hasn't been proper and critical analysis in terms of our building code. Our National Housing Code, Madam Speaker, is one that is wanting. And therefore, there is importance in terms of rethinking climate change from an angle of adopting adaptive building codes in our country. This is what this bill seeks to look at. It is also important, Madam Speaker, that when countries that have made strides in terms of rethinking their entire infrastructure as well as housing, whether commercial or residential housing, people in advanced countries, Madam Speaker, are now looking at utilizing sustainable materials in building their homes as well as building their commercial entities, Madam Speaker, to the extent that people are so strong in Europe as well as in the Eastern world. If you look at Asia as a continent generally, and some specific cases in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, people are very keen on establishing cost divisions in construction infrastructure to the extent that it is easier to rethink buildings with serious tracking of the carbon footprint of those buildings. And to some extent also, people are arguing right now, if you look at the global north, that it is actually possible to start looking at materials in terms of combination to the extent that you can come with the best mixture of material rather than the traditional construction that we always see in this country, where people are heavily depending on steel and cement. There is an advancement in other nations now looking at climate change, where people are now even trying to look at timber and glass as a combination to the extent that this can be able to reduce carbon footprint as well as deal with the issues of extreme floods, extreme heat, and extreme storm. And this redesigning and retrofitting of our building is extremely important, Madam Speaker, because if we do not enhance construction codes that can be able to help us deal with these vagaries of nature, then, Madam Speaker, we are not, first of all, competing globally, but more importantly, we are exposing our population to serious risks. A simple risk as even enhancing insulation, Madam Speaker. we should be able to talk about an environment where the National Construction Authority can be able to put regulations that ensure that there is thermal comfort in whichever place you find yourself doing a construction. For instance, I've had the chance of visiting Mandera, Madam Speaker, in the invitation of my good friend, Senator Ali Roba. And when you go to Mandera, Madam Speaker, the thermal comfort there needs rethinking in terms of how can you make the cooling effect of a housing element be something that is enhancing dignity and is comfortable for the people in Mandera, and also our families that are in the northern part of the country, Madam Speaker. So that, is there a requirement in our National Housing Code that we even try to implement passive cooling strategies in these kinds of housing? Is there a possibility that if you go to Mandera or Wajir or otherwise all these counties that experience extreme heat, that we can even start thinking about green roofs? We can even start thinking about specialized window designs that can be able to allow for communities there to live in some thermal comfort in these communities. But again, when you go to the extreme weather conditions, like where you come from, Madam Speaker, if you look at the western part of Kenya, if you go to Mount Elgon, for instance, we have got serious weather conditions that expose our people to cold that could even lead to pneumonia, Madam Speaker. Is there a possibility that this bill could be able to help the National Construction Authority to ensure that there is enhancement of insulation to the extent that is a requirement when doing housing in this region, Madam Speaker? Alongside this, Madam Speaker, we have seen in the recent past, when we had serious floods, that in our National Housing Code, there is no even rethinking about early warning systems within our building codes, Madam Speaker. People wake up in the morning, it rained in the night, you ask for your spouse, where is your spouse? The rain happened when they were at work, they left work in the evening, they could not be able to make it home. Why? Because there was no proper early warning signs in the National Construction and Housing Codes, Madam Speaker. So it's extremely important that, especially when you think about the urban poor, there has to be a priority in terms of thinking the entire construction in these urban areas, Madam Speaker. And the reason why I think this is a very important bill, Madam Speaker, for us to look at a house, is because the current administration has overemphasized the issue of affordable housing to the extent that we have seen affordable housing going on in the country, Madam Speaker, which is a very important thing. Because if you think about what's happening in Africa today, Madam Speaker, the affordable housing question is a priority of almost every single government in the continent. The only thing that makes difference for our country is that the administration of the day has been bold enough to actually implement it. Because if you look at the shortage that we have in the continent currently, Madam Speaker, experts put it at the shortage of housing is put at around 50 million. And Madam Speaker, that 50 million, if you are to contextualize it in the context of the population growth of Africa, Madam Speaker, today, it is projected that in the next 3-4 years, that is by 2030, we will have a shortage of about 130 million across the continent. Now, how does this manifest in our country, Madam Speaker? Today in our country, this shortage is about 200,000 lack of affordable housing per annum. Yet, even with the good effort that the President Ruto and the current administration has been able to put, we have only been able to have 50,000 availed housing. This is actually both in the private sector as well as in the private sector. But if you look at the affordability element, Madam Speaker, out of these 50,000 houses that have been given in the private sector through mortgage and in the public sector through the affordable housing by the current administration, only 2.2% is actually affordable. So there's a crisis here because we have a serious urbanization that is going on in the country to the extent that even our counties, which is our role to be able to actually align national policies with what is happening in our counties as a priority. In our counties, Madam Speaker, the county that is urbanizing the least, can you imagine, the county that is urbanizing the least is urbanizing at 4.4% per year. So the urban poor is always going to grow in terms of affordable housing. And that affordable housing cannot continue going on when there is no clarity in terms of how climate resilience is mainstreamed in the housing infrastructure. It's extremely important. And therefore, as this program of affordable housing is going, we would want to see a bill that can be able to help the national government and the county government rethink the entire housing code, Madam Speaker, in terms of that design and construction that will make sure that even as you construct houses, Madam Speaker, and as you construct buildings, you are using materials that will be able to ensure that climate change is not an issue that keeps on affecting our people. A simple thing as what is the required foundation for some of these non-elevated areas in our country that we see mushrooming populations that are not well done, they are haphazard in the counties. Who will be able to help us regulate this kind of housing, Madam Speaker, if not this kind of law? Because even where we have got serious flooding, if you have got a housing code that requires a bare minimum kind of foundation to be put in place, kids will not be waking up in Mathare or waking up in Kibra or even in Kabuto, in Migori County, where I come from. People will not wake up that because it has rained, somebody wakes up with their house flooded and they cannot be able to survive. And Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have even seen in this recent past that this does not only affect the residential places. If you go to industrial area, Mr. Speaker, you will find that a simple business that is employing so many people who go to industrial area, like a printing business, whether it's printing books or printing clothes, a printing business during the floods that we had lost 80% worth of their assets in terms of things that had been printed in these enterprises, simply because when the flood happened, it happened in the night, and during the day when they woke up in the morning and went to their shops were flooded with their goods already completely affected, soaked in serious water that could have been avoided if the National Construction Authority was very clear on what kind of housing code those commercial buildings could have been built on. And Mr. Speaker, it is also important to say that this bill will also be looking at the possibility of rethinking our infrastructure development in the context of the entire construction mechanism. Because let's face it, while you can do amazing buildings, Mr. Speaker, if you do not address the issue of proper drainage in Nairobi and proper drainage in our urban areas in the midst of construction, you are always going to face these climate hazards that we keep on facing, like what we see with the floods. We have seen this even in simple design on how waste management should be done. You cannot find a primate city today in the world, because now Nairobi is a primate city. You cannot find a primate city in the world, Mr. Speaker, that there is no proper focus on circular kind of consumption and circular control of waste management. Today in Nairobi, if you go everywhere, you will find that the best dump site that we have in Nairobi is the so-called mutaro. Somebody eats maize, it is thrown in the mutaro. Somebody, has a clothing piece that is not working, it is thrown in the mutaro. Somebody has any kind of waste, mutaro becomes their easiest dump site. What happens when this kind of rains happen? It goes without saying that the backlogs that happen in these mutaros end up affecting the entire drainage. So there is need to rethink and to retrot the entire infrastructural development in our major urban areas as we think about our national construction codes in this country, Mr. Speaker. We have also seen, Mr. Speaker, that the dangers that we're even facing now, we have got a number of pilots here. Like Senator Roba is a pilot, Senator Chuta is a pilot. They will tell you that climate change is now even affecting extreme weather patterns when you go to our major airports, to the extent that sometimes approaching major airports, if you do not allow for proper dynamics of wind to these airports with the kind of buildings that we are building across the airports, Mr. Speaker, you could have extreme weather conditions that, coupled with poor housing codes that do not honor zoning, you can end up having a very big problem. And Mr. Speaker, you remember just in a few weeks ago, we had a member of this House, again, I don't know why problems keep on facing him, on a lighter note, but he was in a flight that crashed, landed in Wilson. And if you look at runway 32 in Wilson, Mr. Speaker, it is being affected during extreme weather conditions because of lack of observance and adherence to serious zoning codes that have been placed in Nairobi and serious zoning codes that have not been reviewed in the entire urban area since 1962. So you can see that these things are all conjoined in a place that, if we do not rethink the entire urban planning and policy so that we strictly have building codes that can be able to ensure updating of these construction requirements and regulations to be able to meet climate change and climate risks, then we are facing a serious time bomb in our country, Mr. Speaker. Alongside that, Mr. Speaker, I hope that this bill will also be able to enhance community-led solutions to some of these vagaries of nature that have got climate component in nature, Mr. Speaker. And one of those is just rethinking the entire financing and investment infrastructure. Because let's face it, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the kind of work that is currently being done with the affordable housing levy that we face in the country, the truth is it hits hard on the pocket of individuals. It shrinks the disposable income that our people have, to the extent that it will be almost impossible to actually be able to achieve the supply of almost 200,000 units that is needed in this country. Therefore, we still need to engage our communities to make sure that we have some financing solutions in terms of private loans and sometimes even civil society financing mechanism that can be able to allow these communities be able to acquire financial aid that can be able to allow them be able to get affordable housing, as well as in their own ways be able to implement some of these climate resilience proposals that are in this bill. So, Mr. Speaker, because of time, and I wanted the senators in the House to also be able to contribute to this bill, I just wanted to say that this is a bill that will be able to look at Section 5 of the National Construction Authority and be able to insert under subsection 5 the element of promoting and enforcing the use of environmentally sustainable construction materials, and as I've captured in my remarks, look at the entire design mechanisms, look at the entire standards that are needed in the marketplace. If you have got standardized ways of having policy response to climate change, Mr. Speaker, then you can go without saying that the practices that are required in the implementation of those standards, Mr. Speaker, will actually be able to help us respond to the climate change risks that we are facing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Section 23B proposed in this bill, we are saying that if it's possible, Mr. Speaker, we can be able to rethink even the agencies that are relevant to the construction, so that there is more consultation that is happening between the authority and the agencies, to the extent that is required with regards to availing the right approaches with the right climatic conditions that appear in some areas. For instance, if you're in Kisumu County, Mr. Speaker, and you are in Mandera, Mr. Speaker, the exposure to solar in those areas makes it possible perhaps to include in our national housing code that those places need to have solar energy systems incorporated in the buildings that we are going to establish in those areas going forward. But if you have to, if you're coming from some zones that perhaps need, cooling systems, it goes without saying that it will be important for us to be able to insert in this kind of law a requirement that will be able to allow a cooling effect or cooling mechanisms and designs in those areas that are facing more serious problems. So, Mr. Speaker, there's a whole new schedule that we are introducing in this act. That will be the fourth schedule that has got some of the responsive mechanisms that I've been able to talk about. I will not go through all of them because certainly we have got members of this house that will also be able to contribute. But in general, Mr. Speaker, some of these mechanisms cut across the issues of designs that can withstand extreme weather conditions, the issue of incorporation of green spaces and natural buffers to be able to ensure that we have got energy efficiency in the National Housing Code, and the implementation of those energy-saving technologies and designs is also going to be in that schedule. We have got also the idea around utilization of renewable energy resources in that schedule. Mr. Speaker, one that is also close to my heart is the idea of water conservation. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you look at countries like Namibia and Malawi, which are, decades and decades behind Kenya as an economy, people have thought about adoptive ways of ensuring that water-efficient appliances and systems have already been implemented in their housing codes. Why is this not happening in Kenya? Why is harvesting of rainwater still an issue that communities in Kenya are still struggling with, to the extent that grey water recycling is almost becoming impossible because there's no harvesting of rainwater in Kenya? Mr. Speaker, I think these are supposed to be issues of the past if we can be able to implement this particular bill to be an active law in the country. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to also look at the issue of pollution control. Mr. Speaker, today, and there was a serious documentary that was done by, I think, Citizen TV, if I'm not wrong. I can fact check and fact find this on the issue of concrete jungle that is coming up in our urban areas. For instance, a place like Kilimani, Kileleshwa, that used to be posh areas, today because of serious urbanization and population bulge in Nairobi, they have become concrete jungle. To the extent that, think about our kids. When you are having a kid in Kilimani or Kileleshwa or this place that we have got these high-rises that have now come, the level of migraines and headaches that are in this area because of lack of proper air circulations in these areas is one thing, Mr. Speaker. Kids can no longer even play in safe playing places because all they have right now is to play within concrete jungles within their own buildings. Mr. Speaker, this is air pollution. And there is also water pollution as well as soil pollution in these areas. Because think about it. These are areas that, despite the fact that now there's technology around things like biodigesters, Mr. Speaker, they are areas that were not designed to be able to take serious sewer systems. So that if you've got a building that now, it used to be a bungalow that was supposed to only hold a family of 10, and now that compound is hosting 700 people in terms of a high-rise, and then you want to depend on a biodigester to deal with the sewer system in this area, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have a serious problem. So it is important that this particular act wants to address this by ensuring that there is safe disposal and management of wastes, both during construction time and during occupancy by families that end up occupying these particular buildings. And then, Mr. Speaker, I also wanted to mention very quickly that this bill also looks at the idea of climate resilience from a biodiversity protection perspective, Mr. Speaker. It is critical that even as we think about construction in this country, Mr. Speaker, preservation of existing and the entire ecosystems around natural habitats must be protected. There has been an attempt, Mr. Speaker, to actually encroach further in the areas that have got natural habitats and have got natural ecosystems that ensure that our biodiversity is protected, Mr. Speaker. We have seen, for instance, despite the fact that the idea of Bomas is a very good one, the Bomas conference facility that is being built in the Bomas, but you can see that slowly by slowly, it is encroaching almost to the park, to the parkland that was meant for natural, habitat for our animals. Mr. Speaker, there are people who come to Nairobi City from Europe, from the United States, and even some guests from the number of countries within Africa that come to Nairobi as the only city across the globe that has got a park, a national park, right inside it. That you can come to Nairobi, go book yourself in Serena Hotel, or go to Fairview Hotel, or go to Sankara Hotel, and then in the morning, you can actually go and have a safari, have a game ride within a city. The humongous element of the well-being of our population being contributed by such natural habitats, Mr. Speaker, cannot be understated. So it is critical that as we look at construction in general, infrastructure, housing, as well as commercial buildings in this country, we must be able to protect our biodiversity, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this bill will do exactly that if you look at under that first schedule. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that Senator Cherargei is somewhere around the House, because I wanted Senator Cherargei to be able to second this bill, given that I had shared with him some of these concepts that I'm trying to explore. It is important, Mr. Speaker, that we start looking at things like health, wellness, and safety when we start thinking about housing. Because, as I talked about it in the concrete jungle, Mr. Speaker, ensuring that there is quality air is very important. But it is not only air that contributes to the well-being of our population, Mr. Speaker. Even natural lighting is extremely important in an age where we're talking about climate resilience mechanism in this country. Mr. Speaker, we have been to some of these buildings where you cannot be able to separate day and night when you go to some of these buildings that have been built in slummy areas, and even as well as these mushrooming areas that we see in this country, where people are doing buildings that are not akin at all to providing a natural light. So long as they can do maximum units, so long as they can build as many buildings as they can do, Mr. Speaker, people keep on, building these buildings without regard at all to health, wellness, and safety of our people, Mr. Speaker. And sometimes this even goes to extreme elements, to the extent that, Mr. Speaker, there are people who even use toxic materials that they're using toxic materials, Mr. Speaker, that when people in these houses end up consuming the units that they've constructed, Mr. Speaker, they end up actually consuming those toxic materials, Mr. Speaker. We've seen, for instance, a fight in the CIPIC, where we have been fighting on the use of asbestos as materials in the construction industry, to the extent that we are now phasing out things like asbestos. But, Mr. Speaker, we need to go to the extent that we can even be able to push for low emission materials in these buildings. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, this also comes to the issue of corruption. It should be in this National Housing Code that when you're found using this kind of toxic materials, you must be held liable. Because we keep on seeing zoning that are being disregarded. This is housing zoning, not the ODM versus UDA zoning, or Linda Mwanainchi versus Linda Ground zoning. This is just housing zoning that has been promoted by the National Construction Authority that is not honored at all. So it's critical, Mr. Speaker, that as we implement this code, that is being proposed in this bill, it is critical that we must be able to hold stakeholders accountable. Those who keep on defying regulations that have been put here must be held accountable. And Mr. Speaker, it will be critical that I say that if we can be able to pass this bill, we will be able to see proper living, better living, healthy living in our economy as a result of this bill. So I hope that Majority Leader will be able to push so that this bill passes the Senate, and when it goes to the National Assembly, I want to wish the Majority Leader in the National Assembly the courage to fast-track this kind of bills, because they will help us rethink our entire wellness as a country in terms of construction. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to move this bill and request my brother, Senator Sifuna, to second the bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the bill by Senator Eddie Okech on the National Construction Authority. Honorable Speaker, unfortunately, when he was moving, I was still attending to the students from the Catholic University, but we finished. It is a pretty straightforward amendment, Honorable Speaker. As I've said, every time that I speak on a bill, you have to start with the memorandum of objects and reasons to understand what the sponsor of the bill is trying to cure. So, Honorable Speaker, if you look at the memorandum of reasons and objects, it says that the object of this bill is to amend the National Construction Authority Act, Cap 118, to include provisions related to environmentally sustainable construction practices and resilience against climate change within the construction industry. I think, Honorable Speaker, where we begin is that we who have lived in this country, who have lived on this planet thus far, are witnesses that a lot has changed in terms of climate. And Honorable Speaker, I was just looking at some of the data. Speaker, if you look at some of the data that has been put together in just the past 20 or so years, Honorable Speaker, from the year 2000, they say that extreme weather has become more intense, more frequent, and more unpredictable. While scientists argue about what the causes are, there are those who don't believe in climate change. We in Africa, and especially here in Kenya, have a lived reality, Honorable Speaker. Unfortunately, in the entire climate change conversation, Africa gets the short end of the stick because we are the ones who have to bear the brunt of the consequences of actions of the West, and especially when it comes to pollution. So, Honorable Speaker, examples are given that in 1997, at least we used to have extreme weather events, but they were very rare and almost followed a certain pattern, Honorable Speaker. Some of the examples that have been given is the 1997 El Nino flooding. Honorable Speaker, we all remember that phenomenon. And the 2008 to 2010 drought that affected about 10 million Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, in 2020 to 2023, this country experienced the worst drought in the last 40 years. And of course, there was severe flooding. I think in the year 2023, Honorable Speaker, we lost very many lives here in Nairobi in areas such as Mathare after the flooding that we experienced. In the 2024 floods, Honorable Speaker, we had 300 deaths arising from that extreme weather event. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, as Kenyans, this is our lived reality. So if you look at the proposals that Senator Eddie is putting forward, all that this bill seeks to do is to entrench designs that withstand extreme weather conditions. And this you will find in the fourth schedule, where he is proposing, Honorable Speaker, that climate resilient, the designs that have to be approved by the National Construction Authority have to be designs that withstand extreme weather conditions. In fact, here in Nairobi, we have had cases, Honorable Speaker, that after long sustained rains, we have had buildings collapsing because of the weight of the water. And we want to be able to incorporate in the designs that are approved by the Construction Authority those that can withstand extreme weather conditions, and for us, especially flooding, Honorable Speaker. Then you will see that under Part B, the bill proposes that those designs must also have energy efficiency in them, implementation of energy-saving technologies and designs. There is actually a requirement, Honorable Speaker, that solar water heating be installed on all residential houses in Kenya. But it is never, ever followed in the constructions that we see, and we need more enforcement to be able to take care of that. And there's a reason, Honorable Speaker. Electricity continues to be one of the biggest pain points for Kenyans when it comes to cost of living. And of course, the situation has been exacerbated just recently, Honorable Speaker, with the high cost of fuel. As a member of the Energy Committee, I am aware, Honorable Speaker, that the cost of fuel is one of the most, the highest component. When you look at your electricity tariff, the cost of fuel is one of the most, the highest and the most painful for Kenyans. So therefore, there is a need for us to explore energy efficiency in constructions for us to be able to cushion our people. And I don't think that enough has been done, Honorable Speaker, to regulate the quality of even these alternative energy sources, the quality and the cost of these components, because we still have, Senator Eddy, situations where these energy efficient technologies are still subject of taxation in our tax codes, and which makes sure that the cost is very high. Nobody would refuse, Honorable Speaker, the proposition that you can actually have a power plant in your house that frees you from electricity bills. But try buying solar batteries, Honorable Speaker, to power a house like a 3 or 4 bedroom house. You will have to pay through the nose. It is not something that every Kenyan can afford. So we need to do more in order to lower the cost of these energy efficient technologies to ensure that we save Kenyans the pain of the cost of energy. Honorable Speaker, there is also the question of water conservation. I'm just going through that fourth schedule, that we need to adopt water efficient appliances and systems and rainwater harvesting and grey water recycling. Part of the problem we see with flooding, Honorable Speaker, is that many of our buildings do not have rainwater harvesting and grey water recycling systems. So when it rains, Honorable Speaker, there is no way to control and channel this water so that it can be safely evacuated. And I am happy that the bill proposes that we should have an amendment to the building code so that we adopt those water efficient systems. Then, of course, Honorable Speaker, there is a question of sustainability, that we should employ sustainable materials in construction. This cannot be gainsaid, Honorable Speaker, because the planet is grappling with a lot of waste, and we need to find a way to be able to reutilize that. So you can see the bill proposes the use of recycled, renewable and locally sourced materials. And this will also contribute, Honorable Speaker, to a greener Kenya and also to promote local industry. One of the things that I have noticed, Honorable Speaker, if you go to many of the constructions that are happening, a lot of the material that goes into these buildings is shipped, and especially from China. You can imagine, Honorable Speaker, you go to many of these apartments you see coming up in Kilimani and in the other areas, somebody puts up a 20-story building, and all the doors are imported from China. All the windows are imported from China. All the MDF cabinets are imported from China. We are killing local industry by not being able to support our local fundis, our local seremalas who can make doors, who used to make doors, Honorable Speaker. So if this bill passes, we are hoping that we can reverse that trend and give priority to locally sourced materials. Of course, we have to up our game, Senator Eddy, in terms of efficiency of manufacturing, in terms of putting out all this material that is required so that you don't delay construction. You have to address the issues of quality and so on and so forth. We also don't want to put our forests in further peril, and we need to be able to look at all of those things to ensure that we progress without regressing. Then, Honorable Speaker, there is the question of pollution control, measures to reduce air, water and soil pollution during construction, and safe disposal and management of construction waste. I just wanted to touch on one last thing, Honorable Eddy, and through the Speaker, on the question of health and safety. Speaker, you know that Kenya banned asbestos roofing in the year 2006. But as a senator of Nairobi, I know that there are still public institutions, including schools, Honorable Speaker, that continue to have asbestos roofing. So one of the things that we need to agree, although the government told us that there would be a first removal of asbestos, Honorable Speaker, we still have very many institutions that have asbestos roofing, and yet it was known in the 80s, Honorable Speaker, that asbestos has carcinogenic properties and it causes health risks. There have been other things that have been invented, Senator Eddy, some materials that when they catch fire, the fumes that emanate from there actually make it more difficult for you to survive if you are caught in that environment because of the materials that have been used in order to manufacture them. So the health and safety concerns are there, and the bill addresses the use of non-toxic and low-emission materials. Honorable Speaker, in construction. Overall, Honorable Speaker, and I can see my chair of PAC, who's actually an expert on matters of environment and climate change, has just come into the House. I want to allow him to teach the House and to educate us. Yeah? No, he's an expert. He's an expert, and in fact, when it comes to matters of climate change caucuses in this Parliament, he's the head of that caucus. So with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second the bill and congratulate my brother Eddy for this straightforward amendment that is going to cure something that actually is a problem. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 15 of 2025, be now read a second time. Okay. Yes, Senator Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, as I rise to second this bill, I want from the onset to celebrate my brother, the youth, the real youth. Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy young people are some of the people, the guests in your gallery are mostly young people in school. It is important that they have come today, that we are discussing the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Eddy Kisheru Okech for bringing this amendment, although he had promised me to second, although he didn't honor that promise. But being a gentleman as I am, I will nevertheless support this amendment, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, the issue of climate change is a very serious issue. And you remember in 2023, the African countries made a declaration here in Nairobi on the issue of climate change. And it became a global concern that how do we handle the issue of climate change. Because, Mr. Speaker, the hottest year since 1800, when the fossil fuels are banned, has called global warming and also human impact that has implicated. And that is why in 2024, it was the hottest year in the history of mankind. I don't know, Speaker, whether you noticed that it was hot in 2024, and it brings some effects that we saw through prolonged famine and drought across the countries and across which was unusual. Even my region, Mr. Speaker, where it is normally the rains are heavy, Mr. Speaker, it was very hot. I know there are hot things in this city, like hot chilies, hot things. I know my chair of PAC knows there are things which are hot that I don't want to mention because this is a PG-rated program. It is parental guided program. But, Mr. Speaker, they say the heating is in the test of the building. And I know when the chair will say something about declaration of climate change, which was adopted in 2023, and I appreciate that he has led the caucus of issues of climate. We need an urgent climate action, which Senator Eddy is trying to do through legislative and policy intervention. That is the role of Parliament. We need to come to action. We need to ensure that there is green economic growth that focuses on green industry, sustainable agriculture, and utilize Africa first, renewable energy potential, aiming middle income status by 2050. So, Mr. Speaker, this was the Nairobi Declaration, And I think Senator Eddy might have read this declaration, and that is why he has degenerated this on the urgent climate action, the issue of green economic growth, that is proposing that whenever we use zoning, we must use things that are environmental friendly. So, Speaker, there is also natural capital utilization and focus for adaptation and many others, and Africa's position. We remember, Mr. Speaker, we have been very slow, especially the role of Africa. I remember I went to Mandera, and I saw where women under the Governor Roba and then had interrogated them to plant trees and take care. It's called Adopt a Tree. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate a young man today who has just planted almost 24,000 trees, Mr. Speaker, in Kaptagat, Mr. Speaker. And I think we need to celebrate. I don't know whether Senator Eddy knows that that young man who planted almost 24,000 is called Hilary Kiplagat Biwot, true founder of Green Earth Ambassadors, that planted at Kesup Forest Block over 24,000 today. And I want to thank PS Chris Kiptor for rewarding him with a Pro Box, Mr. Speaker. And I want to advise people like Senator Ososi to be using Pro Box. It is also a way of escaping dragnet of goons, Mr. Speaker. So if he wants to borrow some tactics, Mr. Speaker, he should also borrow from some of us. Mr. Speaker, I can give him pro bono advice on how to survive inside the rain. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and use Panya routes. Don't use the normal ones. Mr. Speaker, not the main roads. Therefore, I want to celebrate Hilary Kibiwot, who happens to come from Nandi for Kesup Forest Block and has planted close to 24,000. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Senator Eddy in the spirit of broad base. The President has said we plant 15,000. Is it 15 million? Is it 15 billion trees? Is it 15 billion trees? 15 billion trees that the President has proposed, Mr. Speaker. That is also to mitigate the climate change effects. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of asbestos, I went to another school in Nakuru Girls, and I realized almost all buildings are under asbestos, Mr. Speaker. And there is a disease that the public health will tell you, asbestosis, where you feel chest tightness. And also it has carcinogenic products, materials that can cause cancer. Mr. Speaker, you have to explain, and I want the National Assembly to allocate budget. Because, Mr. Speaker, to remove asbestos is very costly and expensive. And even we have banned, Mr. Speaker, in 2014, no one can comply because it's expensive to remove, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I agree with this bill under clause number 2, the amendment of section 5, that promote and enforce the use of environmentally studied construction materials, design standards and practice that enhance resilience against climate change. And I agree, even I'm happy women have taken lead, Mr. Speaker, and I've seen innovation even in sanitary pads that nowadays they are using that are environment that is easy to dispose. Mr. Speaker, I want also to say the issue of Pambas, Mr. Speaker. Also, I know Senator Eddy is here to reach that stage of buying Pambas. We wish him well as he tries to get a good girl and get married and get babies. Then he can understand why we are discussing the issue of Pambas, because it is also still a challenge in terms of disposing, Mr. Speaker. Even the banning of I don't want to discuss outgrowers that he might have, but I'm just saying what the Republic of Kenya knows, and Senator Kajwang should be a good friend because he's an expert in such areas, Mr. Speaker, especially on dowry negotiation. I normally see him over the weekend with the stick and the big coffee. He's a certified dowry negotiator. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of zero tax, I agree on because I'll run through because I want to listen to my chair, who is an expert in issues environment. It's also relevant zoning. So, Speaker, we need to zone. I can see the former ODM deputy party leader, when I mentioned the word zoning, he became too alert, Mr. Speaker. I'm not discussing about ODM zoning or UDA zoning, Mr. Speaker. I'm talking about zoning that NCA should ensure within designated zones, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, have you been to Kilimani of late? They have built so many huge buildings. I was with another gentleman, and I don't know what is happening with Nairobi approval physical planning. I hope the senator, not the senator, the governor of Nairobi is following this conversation. Because it is the work of county governments to do approvals of some of these buildings. Most of these buildings in Kilimani and Nairobi are not environmental friendly, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this NCA, the issue of zoning, should ensure that buildings shall be required to install solar energy systems. Because if you go to Eastern Asia, Mr. Speaker, and even to Dubai, although I saw when the bombs were happening on the issue of Strait of Hormuz, Mr. Speaker, I don't support America nor Iran in this fight. I'm as neutral as it should be. Many people no longer travel to Dubai and UAE Emirates, Mr. Speaker, yet you can see they have succeeded in integrating environmental friendly, and they use a lot of solar. We have solar farms that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker. Although we had a scandal on independent power producers, where the local solar solar farms are selling to independent power producers at the dollars, and I know that we did investigate that matter. That is what is driving electricity to go up. But I agree, Senator Edi, you should also propose in your wisdom that we need to zero rate the issue of solar panels. And lithium, Mr. Speaker, because if you buy one solar panel, it's 15,000 Kenyan shillings. You buy a lithium battery, comes to 150,000, Mr. Speaker. How many Kenyans can be able to buy 150,000 lithium battery, Mr. Speaker? We need to zero tax, and I want to challenge my president and my broad-based partners that we need to zero rate, so that, you know, Kenya Power is a monopoly, Mr. Speaker. We need to give, I want when I come to your region, Garissa, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, all those places, Mandera, at least in Garissa is connected to national grid. But you go to Mandera, Wajir, Marsabit, Turkana, they are not connected to national grid. We should allow them to use solar. And the only way to encourage them is to ensure that we zero rate the issue of solar products, Mr. Speaker, so that they can also enjoy the use of electricity, Mr. Speaker. Can you believe when you are in Mandera town and there is this river called River Dawa? Is it called River Dawa? Just across. There is electricity in Ethiopia. But Mandera does not have electricity. They were just given, and I want to thank President, he sent 2 generators. But because of the heat, they get too hot. And then they switch off, Mr. Speaker, and affect the service. So the issue of solar, and I want to agree with Senator Edi, that we must agree as a nation that if we are truly genuine on the issue of climate change action that happened in 2023 in Nairobi, we must and should allow the issue of solar energy systems to be zero rated, Mr. Speaker. Personally, you know, I gave up on Kenya Power. If you come to my private hacienda, my palatial residence in Mosori at Nandi County, Mr. Speaker, I use solar. Because the electricity is no longer reliable. When it rains, it likes Mr. Speaker, it likes when it rains. I don't know what is the ratio between the rain and the electricity. Because when it rains in this country, electricity disappears, Mr. Speaker. It is like when you are removing clothes from the dry hanging line, Mr. Speaker. So I want to appeal that the issue of zoning, the issue of physical planning within Nairobi, Senator Edi and Nairobi Governor, who has been fairly very incompetent, and I hope the broad-based government does not give him any ticket. He should go to Linda Mwananchi. Mr. Speaker, because if you go to Kilimani, it is very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, and therefore the zoning, in fact, the zones designated that shall include areas that receive
Senator
average.
Osotsi, what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 105. I think my good friend Cherargei has made a reference to the governor of Nairobi being incompetent and suggesting that because the governor of Nairobi is incompetent, he should not get a ticket from Broadbase, but he should get a ticket from Linda Mwananchi. I want to inform him that Linda Mwananchi is not yet a political party. It may become a political party, but it's not yet a political party. And again, Linda Mwananchi advocates for progress. Progress. We are not going to take any mediocres. We are not going to take those who have failed elsewhere into the Linda Mwananchi brigade. So I just wanted to inform him that we are not preparing this movement so that we can take over those who have failed elsewhere.
thank you for that information. That my brother, I'm told, but you know, Mr. Speaker, what is being very selective with the truth, because Linda Mwananchi has registered a political party called People Renaissance. So, but anyway, I agree with him. If somebody has failed anywhere else, he should not be allowed to hobnob. Because, Mr. Speaker, I will, in fact, if you allow me, Mr. Speaker, if you'll be around during the weekend, I can buy you coffee within Kilimani, and then you see how people are suffering. There is no longer sunshine. Children are suffering from jaundice. You know, when we were doing, or jaundice, when we were doing biology, the non-exposure to sunlight is a dangerous disease, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, our children in Kilimani and other areas which have high-rise buildings, Mr. Speaker, is still a problem. And I hope when you get time out of your busy schedule, we can take coffee around that place and you'll be able to see yourself and appreciate why. So the issue of zoning, I agree that it should be focused on, Mr. Speaker, this is zoning on issue of planning, physical planning, not political zoning. And since, Mr. Speaker, you know, Senator Eddy, I hope he will attend the Malindi rally where young people will be addressed, and encourage Senator Eddy, since he's a young leader with progressive ideas, to resist this temptation of political zoning. If you come with political zoning, you are undermining democracy, which you are a political godfather. Right Honorable through the Speaker, Raila Amolo Odinga envisage a country that is climate friendly politically, Mr. Speaker, that you can run for any political office without being politically zoned. Political zoning, Mr. Speaker, is another name of direct tickets, Mr. Speaker. It's another aspect of direct
Eddy,
ticket.
what is your point of order?
It's another aspect, direct ticket. And
Mr. Speaker, you know, I appreciate that Senator Cherargei is contributing to my bill, and therefore I don't want to interrupt him because I'm taking a lot of notes here and a lot of wisdom. But Mr. Speaker, if he takes the chance to misinform the public and misinform the House, then it's not correct. Because under 105, you must be factual. The idea of zoning does not curtail democracy. The idea of zoning, first of all, I need to make it clear that Mr. Cherargei, that personally I don't support zoning. The reason being, I am very competent in Migori County, and I'm sure I'll be elected without zoning. And I can be elected in any party in Migori County. However, the zoning element that is between UDA and ODM is exactly that for that coalition, that it should UDA and ODM go to a coalition, then the zoning is for the two parties involved. It does not negate any other candidate who want to use any other political party or even go independent from running. They can use any other party. There are a lot of other parties. It is wrong to indicate that if there is zoning between UDA and ODM in their regions, then it means that people will be stopped from vying at all. People will still be allowed to vie. It is their democratic right. But just with other parties, the zoning is just between UDA and ODM for those who want them to talk about that zoning element. It's important to clarify that. And it's also important to clarify to you, Senator Cherargei, that the essence of zoning is so that respective political parties can be able to have numbers in the House in case of a post-coalition and post-election disagreement. Then a political party should be able to have its members that are strong enough to be able to run a democratic House like this. Because you can imagine if there is no zoning in some places and then UDA end up taking all the seats, or ODM for this matter end up taking all the seats, then they will harass UDA in parliament. When UDA, they end up, maybe their marriage is broken after the election. So there is pros and cons to the idea of zoning. But all in all, I don't necessarily support zoning because I can be able to win. But zoning is just between UDA and ODM, not all other parties. People can still vie in other parties, even if UDA and ODM are to choose to zone.
Mr. Speaker, and I've noticed your clerk's office are not freezing my minutes when I'm being intervened. It was frozen? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know I'm always comfortable when you are in the seat. I remember today when you are chairing national security, you gave me a very ample time to prosecute matters of national interest. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, on the issue, Mr. Speaker, the issue, I wanted, we are issues of zoning under the amendment. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to inform Senator Edie that political zoning is another name of direct ticketing, and it belongs to lazy politicians who don't want to campaign. Personally, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't have a problem running against an ODM candidate in Nandi County. So I want to encourage Senator Edie, as a young progressive, to retake this notion of political zoning so that we can allow the growth of democracy in our country. And to inform him that the matters today, UDA and ODM met in State House, and everything is in order, Mr. Speaker, because there was perception that there is differences between ODM and UDA. I want to confirm to the country that ODM and UDA marriage is intact and it is very progressive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, because I have seen my time is fast spent, and I wish Senator Ledama would allow the expert on issues of climate to listen so that he will assist us with some clarification. I know Ledama might want to sell him Enkanaza milk or Enkanaza honey, but Mr. Speaker, the green spaces are natural buffers, and I'm a consumer. Although he still owes me some money, which I paid, but he didn't deliver milk. But I hope he will give me milk after this. Utilization of renewable energy sources. There is also green spaces and natural buffers. There is also water conservation, sustainable materials. Mr. Speaker, I think as a country we should push the issue of solid management and recyclement. I think we need to agree. When you go to Wajir, and I know the governor of Wajir doesn't like me because when you go to Wajir, there is no dumping ground, Mr. Speaker. You have been there. You have supported development programs in Wajir, Mr. Speaker. Here in this Nairobi, when you drive through Waiyaki Way, the incompetence of Governor Sakaja shocks us. When you drive at Waiyaki Way, the dirt is on the road, Mr. Speaker. Go here, Kirinyaga. That is all over. There's Senator Edie, through the Speaker. That is the incompetence. You drive through Kibra, that bypass. The people of Kibra are suffering, Mr. Speaker. They need renaissance. Let me not say political renaissance, because it will, the party that is also below, they need a renaissance in terms of leadership, Mr. Speaker. There is also minimizing through efficient water, recycling renewable and locally sourced materials, Mr. Speaker.
Senator,
safe disposal.
Senator Cherargei, do you want to be informed by Senator Osotsi?
No, I will listen to his submissions later.
Thank you. Proceed.
And today, Senator Osotsi is still shining like the aluminium foil. I don't know what he has eaten today. Mr. Speaker, can you add me 2 minutes because I have been interrupted regularly by my colleagues on pollution control. 2 minutes only.
Conclude.
Please, 2 minutes. Pollution control, Mr. Speaker, is we need to agree. I normally drive and see vehicles that still don't adhere to the standards. And I think we need to encourage the use of electric vehicles and many others that are environmentally an issue of biodiversity protection. We agree, especially in our areas, and also ensure walls to support urban biodiversity and allow so that we can ensure an use of non-toxic and low-emission materials. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks and with your indulgence, I want to congratulate.
Give him 1 minute to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank Senator Edie as I support this bill and wish him the very best as he vies to be the governor of Migori. Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank you for the indulgence.
Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this amendment to the National Construction Authority Act that has been proposed by Senator Edie Okech. And Mr. Speaker, I could be a bit underwhelming because the previous speakers have painted me as an expert on the subject matter. Mr. Speaker, I have had the privilege of leading a climate caucus in this parliament. And Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that in the month of May, all African legislators will converge here in Nairobi at the Senate for the Interparliamentary Union Conference on managing emissions from methane. Methane is a gas that contributes significantly to global warming, but it has not been addressed properly and scientifically. Because every time we speak about methane emissions, we think about pastoralist lifestyles, and we think about cows and camels and goats and the emissions that they make. And so African countries have not really plugged into the conversation on methane, but we want to bring that debate to Nairobi. And so in the middle of May, Mr. Speaker, just after the Africa-France conference, we'll also be having the Interparliamentary Union here at our parliament for a conversation on methane. I'm very happy that Senator Eddie Oketch has brought this amendment to the National Construction Authority Act. And yesterday I asked him, how come the National Construction Authority has not proactively thought about this? Because, Mr. Speaker, the carbon footprint of the construction industry constitutes close to 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The construction industry is one of the biggest emitters. And if you look at the components that are used to do our traditional houses, from cement to steel to the aluminium and everything else that's used in the construction industry, they are all very carbon intensive. Mr. Speaker, even if you look at the cost of keeping our houses cool, or keeping our houses warm, or keeping our water hot and clean, it is a significant expense, and it has significant impact on carbon emissions. And again, with rapid urbanization, I heard Senator Eddie say that the least urbanizing county is urbanizing at 4%. We are seeing gradual urbanization. We are seeing the government coming up with an affordable housing program that we are putting huge tenements in urban centers that will pull people from the villages to the centers. And with rapid urbanization, the construction industry's contribution of 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions is bound to rise. But it shouldn't rise if we can do the things that Senator Eddie has proposed in this particular amendment. What Senator Eddie is proposing is, first of all, to have mandatory solar system installation zones, and also to amend the schedule so that the fourth schedule can have climate change responsive mechanisms that will be mandatory and that will be considered in construction activities. Mr. Speaker, if we have a pure or a clear strategy on decarbonization of the construction industry, we can learn some lessons from a few countries that are not very far from our neighborhood. Mr. Speaker, we recently visited Namibia and went to a project called the Oshivela Project. And we found indigenous Namibians, Africans, producing iron ore using green hydrogen. And by that, they reduced the carbon footprint of traditional iron ore production, which typically uses fossil fuels, significantly. And how do you produce green hydrogen? You split water, because water is 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. And how do you split water into hydrogen and oxygen? A simple process called electrolysis. In fact, Mr. Speaker, some of these things we are taught in school. Many of us here studied chemistry all the way to university. But now putting into practice how to separate H2 from O so that the O water can go into production and the H can be used as an alternative energy source, that is where we fail to get things right. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we went to the Oshivela project, we saw a concept that was being done for the first time in Africa, where the iron ore is mined. Then when the iron ore has been mined and placed in a blast furnace, instead of using the traditional fossil fuels using coal, they use green hydrogen to produce iron pigs. Now, they had certain limitations that the iron pigs still had to be exported to Europe so that it could be alloyed to produce steel. But there is potential for us to use, I wouldn't even call it cutting-edge technology, because H2O is something that we are taught in school, just to put into practice the things that we learn in school. And that can only be done if we create an environment where innovation is rewarded. We create an environment where there is certainty when it comes to policy. And we create an environment where there are incentives. If some young people from Technical University of Kenya were to decide to put into practice electrolysis and they were able to produce green hydrogen, could we incentivize them? Could we get them away from the clutches of KRA? Could we build some industry around them to enable them and to encourage other people with similar aspirations to do the same. So it is possible to decarbonize the construction industry through innovation. And Namibia has demonstrated that you can use green hydrogen to produce iron, and because iron is one of the biggest components when it comes to the construction industry. Again, in cement production, Mr. Speaker, cement that we buy, and for some years we've been importing cement. And Mr. Speaker, some of the richest men in Africa have become rich because of cement. And that tells you about the construction boom going on across Africa. But cement is also not something that came from heaven, because cement is about mining the clay or the limestone, as they are doing in West Pokot, then grinding it, then putting it into a kiln, then heating it to temperatures of 1,500 degrees centigrade. Then you produce clinker. And then you combine that clinker with gypsum, and you produce cement. And Mr. Speaker, this is why I agreed with some policy pronouncements previously made by the national government, which I hope has been enforced, that there's no reason why you should be importing clinker. We have enough limestone. We have enough clay in this country. Perhaps what we don't have is sufficient energy to light up those furnaces. But there's coal in this country. But as the Oshivela project in Namibia has proven, we can produce green hydrogen. You could imagine if Devki and its plant up there in West Pokot was getting limestone locally and then splitting water which is widely available through electrolysis and using green hydrogen to produce clinker. Perhaps that could reduce the cost of cement, and that would definitely reduce the carbon footprint of the construction industry. Today, 8% of global carbon emissions comes from cement production. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine what we could do, how much we can lower it if we went into innovation and applied some things that have already been done. Aluminium production is the same thing. Why are we importing aluminium? The story is that we do not have sufficient energy to do the processing that is required for aluminium. I don't think that locally in Kenya there is any company that is doing aluminium right from the raw material to the finished product. But again, using innovation, we can cut down that cost, and aluminium production again contributes to 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Mr. Speaker, Senator Eddy talks of solar zones. Now, in my mind, if this is a responsibility that is going to be given to the national construction industry, I would want the national construction industry, and I agree with Senator Eddy when he says that our building code needs to be revised. Our building code needs to be modernized. Those of us who come from black cotton soil areas, Mr. Speaker, if you have to build a house in my village, you must dig 3 meters down, 3 meters through the black cotton soil, and then you start compacting. You start putting steel. You start putting, it is as if you are building a road. At that time, you are probably just building a 2-bedroom house. The foundation itself is more expensive than the structure that is going to come up. Because we are using a building code, I think a British standard, that has not been revised to be fit for purpose. And it is highly inefficient, it is very expensive, and it discourages many people from building. So we would want the National Construction Authority to relook our building codes and ensure that certain things are made mandatory. One of the lowest hanging fruits, Mr. Speaker, is when it comes to water conservation. And Senator Eddy has proposed that under the 4th schedule, water conservation can be one of those things that NCA must look at. A lot of us here are wasting water from the roof. This country, and if you live in Nairobi, there is sufficient rainfall that if we were able to store the water that comes from our roofs, then we'll never have a problem of water shortage. And it happens in many areas. You find a school has been built with a lot of iron sheet roofs, but not a single gutter, not a single tank. And when you go there as a Mheshimiwa, you are told, Mheshimiwa, help us to get water. And you can clearly see the potential of harvesting rainwater. In Namibia, again, a country that rarely experiences rain, Mr. Speaker, even though rainwater harvesting is not mandatory, it is part of their DNA, that you are not going to build anything without putting a gutter. And sometimes I wonder if you have the money to roof your house, the money to wall your house, and the money to furnish your house, the money for guttering and putting a tank should be the least. And you have seen, we as politicians, those people who want to run against us, some of the campaigns they do is to walk around and giving out water tanks as if it is rocket science. Mr. Speaker, I believe that in public institutions and even private institutions and even affordable housing projects, no rainwater should be allowed to go to waste. It should be captured, it should be put in tanks, and it should be used and perhaps cleaned up because it will provide a fairly cheap and clean source of water for those establishments. So rainwater harvesting and grey water recycling is something that NCA must insist on when making approvals. Mr. Speaker, Senator Eddie Oketch has also said that NCA must look at issues of energy efficiency. You may have noticed that if you go to a hot town like Mombasa, there are certain hotels that are very cool, and there are certain hotels that are very hot, that you must use air conditioning. And Mr. Speaker, I usually find it interesting. Why is it that in this hotel you can sleep without AC, and in this other one you must have the AC on? And you'll notice that the ones where you must have AC on, there's lots of concrete, lots of glass, lots of steel, lots of aluminium, things that absorb heat and make the rooms hot. But you go to certain hotels, and that's why a place like Lamu, it has got a unique architecture. You can find a house without air conditioning, but it is fairly cooler than the modern houses. How do we ensure that we implement or we come up with building plans and building designs that minimize the use of modern cooling? In our case, it's cooling. In other countries, it's about heating. I think in Europe, heating is a big problem, such that when the war between Russia and Ukraine broke out, the biggest issue was how Europe was going to survive winter if Russia was not going to supply the gas required for heating. But in our area, it is about cooling. Can we ensure that our designs and our architecture and our projects are done in such a way that we can take advantage of natural wind flows, vegetation, and all that, so that we reduce the emissions that come from cooling technologies? If you go to places where the AC is mandatory, sometimes you feel sorry for the owners of the establishment, because you find an apartment with 10 ACs, and they have to be on throughout the day, throughout your stay. You can imagine the kind of emissions that is. So if we can have a building code and we can have designs that take advantage of natural circumstances for natural cooling, I think that will go a long way in demonstrating our leadership as a climate champion across Africa. Mr. Speaker, sustainability of materials used in construction. As I illustrated earlier, cement, steel, aluminium, and all those other components, and the big trucks that are used to deliver cement to site, contribute very highly to global greenhouse gas emissions. But if NCA could insist on the use of recycled, renewable, and locally sourced materials, and minimizing waste through efficient design and construction practices. Mr. Speaker, these are things that any plan that is sent to NCA for approval must meet. These are standards that a building plan application must meet. And I don't think that this would in any way impose any additional cost on developers, because it's just about being innovative. It's just about being ingenious. Because some developers just pick building plans from the 1950s, and it's the same thing that they want to be approved today. If you go to some urban centers across this country, you know there's a traditional way that shops were being built by the Indian merchants. If you go to like Vihiga, Maseno, even parts of Kisumu, places like Kindu Bay, places like Homa Bay, there's just one structure where there's a huge facade, and then there's a long go down behind the building, and it's been the plan from the 1930s to date. The people doing building plans must be innovative, and they must start thinking about aspects of climate. Mr. Speaker, incorporation of green spaces and natural buffers. I do recall we visited Russia at some point in the last parliament. And Mr. Speaker, what surprised us was that Kenya's ambassador to Russia, or is it High Commissioner to Russia, was living in an apartment, not the way they live in gated estates in Muthaiga and Runda. Our ambassador was living in an apartment, but that apartment looked like a 1-acre property because it's an apartment of the 40th floor, but it has gardens, it has grass, it has trees. It is possible. This concrete jungle that we're building in Nairobi, we must insist that we incorporate green spaces and natural buffers in every project that we do. Mr. Speaker, it's possible to do that even on the 50th floor, on the 60th floor of buildings, and that has been proven in countries such as Russia. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Senator Eddy has also indicated that NCA must look at issues of pollution control, whether developers are putting in place measures to reduce air, water, and soil pollution through construction. Mr. Speaker, asbestos has been outlawed in this country, but it's still there. Actually, in most of the old schools, national schools, the big old schools, asbestos is still there. And Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure, perhaps through the national government CDF, which as contentious as it is, but the reality is that it's still going on, that no NG-CDF fund should exist for more than 3 years and still you have asbestos roofs in that constituency. Mr. Speaker, it's a mockery because instead of going to build a new school somewhere, and yet your best school there, for example, in Homa Bay County, Homa Bay High School, one of the best, finest, oldest schools, you still find asbestos roofs. That should be the priority before opening a new dormitory or before opening a new library somewhere there, because the lifelong effects of having asbestos lingering around our children is too high. But, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, it is possible for a home to warm itself, to cool itself, to be sustainable as far as water is concerned, and even to feed itself. A home can feed itself by tapping into water, rain harvesting. A home can feed itself by using that water to set up a small garden. A home can cool itself through innovative construction and innovative architecture. A home can heat itself through innovation. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that if we upgrade our building code, perhaps we'll shave off 30% of the current cost that we are incurring, and we'll also be able to shave off at least 30% of our current emissions coming from the construction industry. We must continue supporting innovation. And Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge that even as we look at the future of this country, let us be leaders in words, not just in words. Let us be leaders in deed and do some of the things that small neighboring countries like Namibia are doing. Our children can produce green hydrogen, and that can be a substitute to the fossil fuel, and that can place us squarely on that road to climate leadership. I know currently most of our energy is from geo, and it is green, but it is inadequate. Mr. Speaker, an economy like ours cannot run on 3 gigs of electricity. And the barriers have been policy uncertainty. Policy keeps shifting. Fiscal policy keeps shifting. Incentives keep shifting. Mr. Speaker, I support this amendment, and I encourage Senator Eddy to ensure that this matter quickly goes through the National Assembly so that it can be assented to by the President, so that by the time when we are doing the Conference of Parties on Climate Change in Ethiopia, that will be COP32, we can go there and proudly say that we pushed legislation that added to the climate response measures in Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Olekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, very briefly, I rise to support this bill, the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, sponsored by my good friend, a young man educated at Yale University, one of the best universities in the world. And I have to say that Eddy is very progressive, but sometimes the way we develop legislation in this country limits our ability to become innovative. I love this bill. And when I was reading through this bill, the only problem that I have with this bill, which I'm currently going through with my bill on seed varieties, on amendment to CAP 326, is a conflict between 3 ministries. Currently, I'm facing a very big fight between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Trade. Because in my bill, I'm introducing a parallel seed standardization process to be oversighted by the Ministry of Trade under KEBS. Now, I've taken my time to read through Senator Eddie's bill, and I see a conflict between three ministries and the county governments. Number one, NEMA is a state agency under the Ministry of Environment and Climate and what else? And Fisheries. NCA is a state agency under the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Planning. And then number three, we have EPRA. EPRA is a ministry under the Ministry of Energy. And I want my dear brother to listen carefully. First of all, I want to put myself to the shoes that I wear on a daily basis of a developer. The first thing that goes into my mind is that, wow, look at all these regulatory bottlenecks. Look at the entire cost that now this bill is empowering NCA to be able to do the work of urban planning, which is the work of the county governments, to do the work of energy regulation by zoning certain areas and designate them as solar areas. That is the work of EPRA. Then now, we now have the issue of, there's the issue of three, energy. Number two, there's the issue of urban planning, which is reserved for county governments. There's the issue of zoning, which is something that is shared between the Ministry of Housing and county governments. And then there's now the issue of the regulator to ensure standards are put in place, NCA. Now, as a developer, I will be opposing the bill because I'll say I'll pay NEMA, I'll pay NCA, and I'll pay EPRA for me to get a license. I want to beseech my brother to reduce the powers given to NCA to be setting standards. Leave NEMA to carry on with its task when it comes to the issue of the environment. Leave the county governments to be able to deal with their urban planning. But NCA set up standards. Mr. Speaker, if my brother would follow that, this bill will pass through very fast, because as a county government, I'll be concerned, I'll be saying I'm the governor, but I do not have the revenue which the Constitution gives me to issue permits for construction. Now, NCA, this monster, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We love the environment. You know, NEMA gives you an environmental impact assessment. They give you a license to that. You pay them money. NCA, you pay them money. County government, you pay them money. I'm concerned about that issue. Number two, Mr. Speaker, because I want to be very, very, very brief on this matter. I love the fact that the bill promotes and enforces the use of environmentally sustainable construction material. It is important. Mr. Speaker, when you go to Narok County and you go to those very luxurious lodges that we have in the Mara, which we invite everybody to come, they are constructed with environmentally friendly material. Love the bill. I want now for us to see new cities coming up Because this concrete jungle that we live in now in Nairobi and other urban areas, nothing will change. But we can tweak it a little bit to make sure that we use environmentally friendly, materials. I'll give you an example of a building in Nairobi, which when this building came out, I think in 2019, a space in that building was being sold for 20 million. This is greenhouse building along Gong Road. They created that building to a point where your energy cost would be very low because of all the glass and the environmentally friendly. I wish you could have built more of those buildings. My only concern in this bill, and I want to persuade my brother, is on the issue of zoning certain areas and giving NEMA that power to say that in this area, because there's a lot of sunshine, all constructions here will have to be solar friendly. They have to install solar. I think we should leave that open so that I don't have to go to NCA now to get a license so that I can be able to put solar in my building. Mr. Speaker, my home, the home I live in, my entire house, I have maybe 70 kVA solar, my electricity bill. In fact, KPLC is the backup. One more minute, Mr. Speaker, and I end. KPLC is my backup. But now, if I have to go to NCA to get a license for me to be able to put solar in my building, that will be a problem. Number two, this mandatory solar installation in certain areas and to be determined by the authority in consultation with other agencies is a problem for me. That one we need to change. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because of time, and I'd like my colleague to be able to comment on this, I want to end by saying this. I support this bill, but I would like to request my brother to amend to ensure that these regulatory overlaps are done away with. NCA overbearing regulations, that is what I would deduce this bill to be. The NCA will have so much power, it will be overbearing, to NEMA, to, everyone. And then also there'll be a lot of cost associated. You do not want to be navigating through the hurdles that I'm currently doing with 2 ministries. Now yours has got 3 ministries and the county government. I rest my case. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Olekina. Senator Osotsi.
Speaker, for this opportunity to also raise my comments on this bill, the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill has some sweet and bitter aspects, but I want to join my colleague, Senator Olekina, to say that maybe the owner of this bill needs to look at those aspects which are of concern, and this has been raised not just by the members here, even I've been reading the report by the stakeholders. They have raised concerns on some of the issues. But of importance, Mr. Speaker, is that this bill is giving another function to the NCA of having to ensure that the buildings will now be environmentally friendly in terms of the material and in terms of resilience to climate change. This is a very important aspect, Mr. Speaker, because if all the buildings are going to have solar systems, then that is going to help us to address many issues in terms of energy use, and also to some extent ensuring that our homes are properly lit at night, and that in a way, especially in the rural areas, helps to reduce incidences of insecurity. But Mr. Speaker, I think even as we give NCA more roles, we must ask ourselves, has NCA lived to its mandate or not. Mr. Speaker, I think that's a very important concern, because we have had many complaints around the function of NCA. And now, because of the incompetence at NCA, we have had cases of collapse of buildings, especially in Nairobi, where you saw the other time we had a building that collapsed in South B. We have had cases in Eastlands where buildings have been collapsing, just because of some element of incompetence around NCA. We have had complaints around registration and the licensing delays, that people have complained that the request for registration or licensing have taken a long time to be addressed. I think that's an issue that must be looked at. Even the system, the portal, has been experiencing a lot of downtimes because of largely technical incompetency. Issues of rejection of application or registration of licensing without any valid reason, without any explanation, have been voiced, Mr. Speaker. Issues of inconsistent site inspections. They come and give approval for some milestone assessment, and then you find that next time someone else comes and gives a different inspection report. This has been reported so many times. Harassment, especially of small contractors and small fundis, has been reported. Issues of corruption, Mr. Speaker, where some officers from NCA have been asking for facilitation fees so that they can approve your license or even your registration or even your construction. That has been on the rise. And also the cost, high cost of operation. If you ask 0.5% of the contract sum as either as a fine or as a penalty, Mr. Speaker, that is quite expensive. If you look at it in terms of the number of construction that go on and even the volumes of construction that go on in Nairobi, then you realize that this is quite high. They have issues about high training cost, especially for fundis, small fundis in the village, Mr. Speaker, asking them to pay exorbitant amount of money for training, annual training. That is not right. And considering that NCA is largely or heavily a Nairobi organization, it disadvantages those who come from villages. Those have been concerns. I just decided to raise this because even as we give NCA more mandate, we must look at what have they done with the mandate they have. But I want to agree with the owner of this bill that it is important for this country to ensure that buildings that are constructed are environmentally friendly, are resilient to climate change, and the materials used are not only cost effective, but they are also environmentally friendly. But even as we talk about environmentally friendly, the issue of durability, these materials must be durable so that they can last for many years to come. Senator Kajwang, when debating on this matter, he said that we need to consider low carbon alternatives to cement and concrete. Mr. Speaker, we have bamboo. Bamboo is a very, very good material that can be used, that is environmentally friendly, that can be used. We also can use stabilized soil blocks where we have soil and mix it with a little cement or lime, and this can also reduce the cost, make it more durable, and also environmental friendly. We have something called the ferroc. Ferroc is basically made from the steel dust. In most cases is wasted in our steel plants, and the advantage with this is that it absorbs carbon dioxide as it hardens, and it is even more stronger than concrete. These are some of the things that we can consider when we talk about environmentally friendly materials. Mr. Speaker, I also want to propose that even as we amend the NCA Act to provide for environmentally friendly material, we also need to consider amending the building code, because the building code that we have does not really factor in the aspect of environmental friendly, and it is long overdue. I know it is new as at 2024, but you find that many aspects, especially on environment, are not covered, and a lot of reference is still being made to the code developed in 1968. You still find a lot of reference to that code. I think that tells you that it is high time that we have a more comprehensive code that addresses all these issues. Mr. Speaker, even as we look at this, we must consider the issue of conflict, of regulatory conflict. The conflict that is likely to exist between NCA and NEMA. NEMA issues permits on environmental aspects in building. NCA is now being mandated to do the same. There is likely to be a conflict there. So I think the owner of this bill needs to look at that. We also have the issue of duplicate mandate. For example, we have a role that is being played by county governments in terms of approvals. We have a role that is being played by NEMA. How is that conflict going to be resolved, Mr. Speaker? So I think that needs to be looked at and improved in this bill. And I think this bill is, with those amendments, it would be a very timely bill to help in ensuring that we have buildings which are environmentally friendly. And as I talk about the building code, there are many other aspects that the building code does not cover. For example, the building code needs to talk about integration of technology in our buildings. You find that many buildings in this country do not have room for technology integration. I think that is a matter that also needs to be put there. The issue of, if I take you back as I finish, to the issue of NCA. NCA have to look at ways of limiting foreign contractor dominance. Because most of the buildings around here, you see that they are being done by foreign organizations, and yet we have local expertise. I think NCA must resist the temptation of creating space for dominance by foreign contractors at the expense of our own local contractor. I heard the other day the chairperson of Engineers Registration Board complaining about this, that we are taking away jobs that should actually be done by Kenyans. I think the right organization to help us in addressing this problem is the National Construction Authority. Mr. Speaker, allow me to end there and support the bill with the improvements that members and myself we have suggested. Mr. Speaker, I support.